Meeting is streaming on YouTube. There we go.
How many are watching?
When we do the roll call, we can get into the staff introductions. How's that work?
Perfect. So to reduce the likelihood of spread of COVID-19, the meeting of the Leawood Public Works Committee is being conducted remotely using the Zoom media format, and some members of the board may be appearing remotely. Public comments will not be accepted during this meeting. City Hall is closed for the public access during this meeting. However, the meeting will be live streamed on YouTube, and the public can access the live stream by going to the link posted on the city website, www.leawood.org. Based off of that, want to have a roll call for everyone. My name is Andrew Osmond. I am a council member, Ward 1. And why don't we do the council members first?
I can
Julie
roll
Kane.
two. Let me call off the roll call, so that way we go in order.
Perfect. Yep.
Okay, Julie Kane,
Julie here.
Jim Rawlings,
Here.
Chuck Sipple,
Here.
Lori Ames, she's absent. Ken Conrad,
Here.
Abbas Saderi,
Coming in right now.
he's
There he
here.
is.
Abbas, you're on mute.
Oh,
We're doing roll call, Abbas.
Okay, Abbas Hadri Committee.
Then Todd Harris, he's absent. Marcia Monica,
Here.
Christopher White, he's absent. Okay, and I'm David Lay, Public Works Director. Brian Scoble is on Zoom with us. And then we have Kristen Love to my right, to my right over here. So she started with us in January, and she took over for Julie's position. So she's been with us for several months now. And then over here on my left is Abby, and she started with us about 2 months ago. And so she's worked at the front counter for us as an admin assistant.
Welcome both.
This-
Thank you.
Welcome.
So the first agenda item is old business. Approve the minutes from January 6th, 2021 from the Public Works Committee meeting. Any
Move to
comments or
approve.
questions?
this is Ken. On page 3, right in the center of the page, there's a vote by roll call. And in the end of the second line, it starts, Ken Conrad suggested, as far as committee, haven't we done our job? Really read a little awkward when I read it the first time. I may have said it that way. But I wanted to be clear that as the committee, I feel we did our job. We evaluated the proposals, we voted, and we had a recommendation for the staff. So I don't know how other people feel about how it reads, but I wanted it to be clear that, in my opinion, I mean, I think that as a committee, we did our job in that.
Okay, we can make those changes.
So Ken, is that a motion to approve with the subject changes?
Yes, and then I guess motion to approve with subject changes.
Do I hear a second?
I second.
Second from Marcia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Minutes pass. And so the next item for business is the, hold on. Request from Public Works to select a design consultant for the 2023 Tomahawk Creek Parkway College to Row improvements. And David, if you could go into the suggested improvements along with the roundabout and what our goals and objectives are for that.
Okay. I'm going to do a screen share. Oops. Okay, so can everybody see that? It says Tomahawk Creek Parkway?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay. So Public Works is looking to, what we need today is to review the consultant selection of the short firms, or the short list of firms that Brian and I selected. And then we also want to go through the ranking sheet. So that way, when we meet with the consultants, they understand what they need to show in their RFQs when they submit them back to us. So I'll start off here. It's just going to be, this will go through the improvements. So Tomahawk Creek Parkway, the construction is scheduled for 2023. It includes widening of the roadway 5 feet in both directions for bike lanes. We're going to install ribbon curbs along the inside and outside of the pavement edge, and that's to keep the asphalt in place so we don't get a lot of edge breaking with the asphalt. We are looking to install 2 pedestrian crossings from the west side of Tomahawk Creek Parkway, and we will have rapid fire beacons, or we may do a hawk system to get them across, those pedestrians across Tomahawk Creek Parkway. And then we're going to construct the trail extensions to get them down to the Tomahawk Creek Trail. We're going to install native trees throughout the corridor. We'll work with parks on that as far as where's the best location for those trees. And then probably the biggest item is the roundabout at Town Center Drive and Tomahawk Creek Parkway. So in order to get federal funding, there were a few items that we had to add to the project. Originally, this was going to be a mill and overlay with just 4-foot bike lanes, but to get the points in order to receive federal funding, we ended up adding those pedestrian crossings, which we get a lot of requests for that. The native trees, to get the, they're trying to get more environmentally friendly with the BMPs and things like that. And then the roundabout for safety. And so the total cost of the project is $5.6 million, and we're receiving 3.76 from the federal government. And then 1.854 is coming from the Leawood. It's going to be a bonded project. So I'm going to jump to Tomahawk and Town Center Drive. Here's an aerial. And so kind of describe the situation or the problem that we have with this intersection is it's a pretty wide intersection. And if we were to try to put signals at this intersection, we would actually need 2 sets. So you'd have one set of signals here for southbound, and then you'd come over here and there'd be another set of signals for northbound. And since we have a wide intersection here, we would end up having to, the northbound and southbound left turns would be protected movements. So you would not be able to, if you're during the day wanting to come up here and make a left, you would have to sit here at a red light, and then we'd have to stop southbound traffic to get that movement to go through the intersection. And the problem with that is it's such a wide intersection, that minimum green time is probably going to be 20 seconds or so. So it's probably going to take 25 seconds in order to clear that left turn for even just for one car. But the biggest issue is if you have, because you get cars coming periodic or just sporadic through the day, if you get one car going northbound to make a left, and you have another car coming here to eastbound to make a left, you have to stop all the traffic and then allow eastbound to go through, which is going to be at least 25 seconds. And then you give everyone a red light, and then you allow the northbound left turn to go through, and that's going to be probably about another 20 to 25 seconds, probably 25 seconds. So you're going to be stopping southbound traffic for 50 seconds to really just allow a couple cars through. It's a very inefficient intersection to signalize, and so that was one of our big concerns with that. And so we looked at, pre-COVID, we started looking at the traffic counts, and we talked to a consultant who reviewed the traffic counts, and they didn't do any calculations. They were just kind of looking at it just in general to see if they felt a roundabout would work. And so the nice thing about the roundabout, obviously, is just free flowing. So during the day, no one's having to stop. You can you just have to yield to cars that are in the intersection. And so I provided this drawing in the packet, and it's a roundabout in the size is similar to one that's in Lenexa. And so I just came in here. It's just to kind of show how it would fit within this intersection, how a roundabout would fit. It's not the final design. We are looking to hire a consultant who's an expert in roundabout design so they can look at it and design the appropriate roundabout. So that's kind of a brief overview on why we are looking at doing a roundabout. Now, if we decide to not do a roundabout, we would have to go back and possibly give up the 3.76 million we have in federal funds, because as I said, that was part of the scoring system in order to receive that funding. So if there are no questions on that.
David, I've got a question.
Okay.
What's your initial reaction to a roundabout? I think it's a great idea, but what are you thinking from your professional standard?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that like roundabouts and there's a lot of people that don't like roundabouts. So I think this is an excellent location for one, just because of that wide median, that it fits that area fairly well. And I think with the free flowing traffic during the day, you're going to get a lot less delays with the traffic signal or with the roundabout. And so that's just kind of the reasoning for, trying to put a roundabout in this location. And the other thing that Brian and I did when we shortlisted the firms, we wanted to find a firm that has designed a lot of roundabouts and has that expertise, because we want them to review the intersection again just to verify that the roundabout is the correct choice. If it's not the correct choice for this intersection, we will bring that back to the Public Works Committee for discussion, because we don't want to put something here that's not going to be efficient.
This is Ken, just real quick. Did I hear you say that if it did not have a roundabout, that we wouldn't get the federal funds? Is a roundabout required for the federal funds?
Part of the ranking system, when you make applications for federal funds, you have to discuss all your improvements, and the roundabout was one of the items that they had on the application to receive additional points in order to score higher. So we had included the roundabout within that packet. So yes, if we don't do the piece, excuse me.
It will be needed in this project to get the funds.
Correct.
So we can't get rid of it.
Well, if we get rid of it, then we would just have to reevaluate the project. And if we don't receive the funding, then we would just have to bring back the scale or the scope of the project, maybe just do bike lanes and nothing else.
Okay. I want to clarify that. I guess we'll have to hire somebody and pay them, but then we'll just drop it from the project, and the project will cost less, and we'll have to fund it solely from the city.
That's correct.
Okay. I guess from a Public Works Committee standpoint, I guess it sounds like something that, how much were they going to put in? No, I forgot the number.
Federal funding is 3.76.
So does the city, I don't know how much the roundabout costs, but if you get rid of the roundabout, then you got to put in signals.
We would look at doing that, correct. The consultant we hire is going to review the intersection. So if it meets signal warrants, yes, we would install signals, and that, the signals are probably going to be $600,000 to $700,000 because we need 2 sets of them. So it's going to be fairly costly to do traffic signals too. The roundabout cost estimate, I believe it was right around 1.25.
Okay. Well, I thought I heard you say that, and I wanted to make sure that we have a contingency plan for the federal funding if for some reason the consultant and the city in general decides to not put in the roundabout.
Right. We would just go back. We would not do the landscaping, that native landscaping. We wouldn't do that. We would not do the 2 pedestrian crossing connections from the west side to the Tomahawk Creek Trail system. We would pull that out from the project.
Okay. Well, then on to the roundabout, and now isn't the time to have an in-depth discussion, but I think that my experience with roundabouts has been proper design. There are so many of them throughout the city where the diameter is, I believe, and I don't know how to design a roundabout, but I find them very difficult to merge from one lane to the other. The merge distance between intersecting roads is so small, it can be difficult. Fortunately, there aren't very many places where there's a lot of traffic. Now, you mentioned Lenexa. Where is that exactly?
So Lenexa has quite a few roundabouts. If you go on 95th Street, which I believe is Prairie Star Parkway, west of K7, they have a number of them in a row. I think also east of K7, there's quite a few of them. And then they also have them on Renner.
Okay,
so once we hire a consultant, and if whatever they recommend for this intersection, we'll bring it back to the Public Works Committee so you can ask all these questions of the consultant.
Okay,
committee.
that's fine. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so as part of the project, and this is not in the federal funding, but Johnson County provides, it's going to begin funding flood projects again. There are several different types of projects they're going to flood. They are currently still working out their funding, how they're going to fund projects, but they believe in the fall of 2021, so this fall, that they're going to start allowing preliminary engineering studies again. So the other item that we want the consultant to look at is, so on the screen now is Tomahawk Creek Parkway. So the limits, as we discussed, are from College Boulevard, and it comes down through here all the way down to Row. And if you look at the blue or the shaded blue areas here, that's the floodplain. And as you can see, practically the entire parkway is within the floodplain. The street floods a couple times a year, and so we're having to shut it down periodically throughout the year. So the other option that we want the consultant to look at is to do a preliminary engineering study to determine which sections of Tomahawk Creek Parkway could be raised, be brought out of the floodplain, or if there are some other improvements with the channel improvements or something else that they can do to lower the floodplain, so that way the roadway is not in floodplain. So the preliminary engineering studies are funded by the county at 100%. So to do the study, there's no cost to the city. But we do want the same consultant that we hire for the roadway to do that study for us. And that would occur in the fall of 2021. So if we do qualify for funding, we would need to make a separate application to the county to do any floodplain improvements. And the county, the funding would either be 50% or 100%. So if they were to come back and only want to fund 50% of our floodplain project, then we would need to work, Public Works would need to work with council to see if that's something that we want to do, if we want to increase the project cost to do that work. But we do want to, like I said, to do the preliminary engineering study is really no cost or no risk to the city either. So we want to proceed with that in the fall also. Any questions on that? Julie?
Yes, thank you. I'm following what you're saying. What I'm not following is where are those two trail connections going to cross on this stretch that is part of this package?
So we're looking, that's a study that we would want the consultant to review the pedestrian traffic. So we would want to go out and look at how pedestrians are utilizing the sidewalks and trying to get to the trails currently. But I believe it's probably somewhere around the 114th Street area right through here that we may look at doing a pedestrian crossing. It's probably going to be more mid-block. It's not going to be at the intersection. We don't want pedestrians crossing with a bunch of turning movements. So there's a parking lot that's right here also. So that, and the trail kind of swings fairly close or closer to the parkway there. So we'll probably be looking at one there. And then the other one would be somewhere between Town Center and probably right around the 115th Street area, actually, somewhere in that location. Because we're currently looking at doing one right around on the north side of Town Center as this pedestrian or the trail that comes down behind City Hall. You know, we're looking at trying to get funding for that through a different mechanism, but then we're going to bring that down Town Center, and then that trail will swing to the north and then cross over Tomahawk Creek Parkway by the South Lake.
That would be north of this roundabout then.
Correct.
Just because I'm also on Arts Council we just did a master plan for current and future art pieces, and there's always talk about connectivity to where the art pieces are. So you have that Feather and Heart course on the corner of the Justice Center, which you can walk right up to. But there's also that big piece just north of that, you know, while we're talking about where we're crossing, you know, perhaps that should be taken into consideration to, if we're going to put a crossing, to allow it to, you know, people to get up and closer to those art pieces or not, depending upon, but I think we need to keep that in mind. And then there's locations up and down there where future art pieces may go, being the definitive word. So just a thought to try to coordinate all that thinking.
We'll work with Parks Department on that also that's a good point about the future art. And then also with, like I said, with the BMPs and the trees that we're going to put on, put out there. We will work with Brian Anderson to help us best locate those trees. Abbas, did you have a?
So, oh,
Thank you, Marcia. The question I have, one is those pedestrian crossings, will they have a stop sign or just a flashing pedestrian signal?
We're looking at just doing like flashing yellow lights, so they're called rectangular rapid fire beacons.
Similar to what's there at 143rd at Pretty Star Elementary?
Yes.
Okay, I've seen people just blow through that. And I think Tomahawk Creek Parkway has more traffic than 143rd. With due respects, I even saw a police officer blow through it with a kid standing on a bicycle on the other side with the lights flashing. I'm assuming he was probably occupied with something else or rushing. He didn't have his beacons on. So, just FYI.
We'll work with the consultant on that as far as recommendations for the safest crossings.
Right.
Marcia, question?
And I had one more thing to that. Hearing Julie talk about art, would you also consider some street furniture or benches or something at those locations potentially to create nodes along the trails? Because I don't see many nodes where people can stop and rest. Is that something we would consider in Leawood? And I know that's a separate discussion, but I just wanted to plant the seed.
Yeah.
That's something we would have to work with Parks Department on, because Parks would maintain all that.
Andrew got kicked out. He's trying to get back in, but somebody has to let him into the meeting.
Thank you.
Sorry, Marcia.
now my question was what Abbas's is what kind of, on these pedestrian crossings, what are they? Because is it going to be a signal where traffic has to stop, or if it's, that was my question. So.
Abbas?
And, and going back to what Ken was originally talking about, and I know you're going to have your consultant kind of give us a design, but I noticed on the roundabout, going back for a minute, that the roundabout itself has just one lane, although 2 lanes lead into it. So what happens if I'm in the left lane? I'm forced into the roundabout, or do I continue on? And so I'm wondering if it wants to have 2 lanes, because if I'm going to take a left, it's forcing me to be in the left lane. Or does the roundabout want 2 lanes?
We would need the consultant to design that for us.
Right.
That's getting into quite more details, and I have I'm not a roundabout designer, so I wouldn't be able to.
Right. Yeah, I'm just going by what I've seen, particularly overseas, where they have huge roundabouts, great way to move a lot of traffic. I've seen 2-3 lane roundabouts, but I just wanted to, again, talk about it just briefly, but we can move on to the next point.
Okay. So the consultants that Brian and I have selected or shortlisted, they've designed several roundabouts within Johnson County, and they've also completed Johnson County preliminary engineering studies. So they're familiar with those requirements. And so we're looking to contact GBA, HDR, Olson Associates, and Trans Systems to submit RFQs. And so the question we have for you is, are you okay with that list, or is there anybody else that you want us to consider?
This is Chuck. I'm comfortable with the list. If you could go through that list and tell us where the city of Leawood has used each of these in the past and what their performance has been.
Okay, so GBA currently is designing a storm sewer project for us in Waterford. So that project has been delayed because they're phase 2 of a project. Phase 1 project has been delayed because of condemnation. So we're kind of on hold with GBA on that. GBA also provides our biannual bridge inspection. And so they've been doing that for us for the last 30 years that they provide that inspection for us. They've designed several other projects, but it's probably been over 10 years. HDR, they are the engineers that have completed the Johnson County wastewater treatment plant. They did quite a bit of that work. They prepared a preliminary engineering study for us on the flooding north of 435 between Mission and Lee Boulevard. Olson Associates is the city's traffic consultant, so we utilize them quite often for that, for those services. And then Trans Systems really has not designed a project for the city in, boy, probably 20 years. It's been a while. But Trans Systems does a lot of roundabout designs, and so they're really experienced in the roundabouts.
Thank you, David.
Just a quick question. I don't see Burns and Mac on this. Any particular reason? Because I know they did 143rd, right?
They did 143rd Street. I'm not familiar if they've completed any roundabouts.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, so we'll proceed forward then with those 4 consultants. Okay, so the next item, you may not be able to read this on the screen, but it's the design engineering, the selection process. And so just wanted to make sure that these are the typical 6 categories that we've always rated. But kind of the question I have for you is, you know, if we have 4 firms selected, or if there's going to be 4 firms, we're looking at just scoring each one of these at 1 to 4. Do you want to add more weight onto certain items? For instance, similar experience. Do we want to maybe double the points there to give a firm who has completed more roundabout designs a little more advantage, or I leave that up to you guys?
I've got a question on the evaluation. We've looked at this evaluation form many times for many years. It's been massaged and changed and all that. But in your estimation, David, is this working fine for you as far as when we make the final evaluation? Do we need to keep beating this horse on the back, or I'd like your thoughts. I mean, I'm fine with this, but it seems like this form has been working fine for the last couple of years. And so what are your thoughts? Do we
Yeah, I
need to
agree.
change?
These categories are pretty standard categories, so I think that all the categories are good. We give this to the consultant so they understand when they're writing their RFQs that they need to make sure that they're hitting on these items. But kind of maybe more of the question is do you want to rank each one of these as the same weight? So sometimes in the past, we've given more weight to certain categories. Julie?
I personally think in this case, we should do that because David and I spoke about this yesterday, and he explained to me that one of these firms, and I don't know which is which because he wouldn't tell me or couldn't tell me, but one of these is the one that teaches everybody else how to correctly design roundabouts in this area, and then another one. One of them also has way more experience, and then the other 2 don't. So I think that because this is the one and I guess Row and 435 is a roundabout of sorts or whatever, but that was a Fed project. I personally think that we need to really weigh heavily on the firms that have more experience. Just because they've done a roundabout or 2 doesn't mean that, to me, in this case, that should be weighted the same.
I just had a question back to you and Brian. In your experience, out of these 6 points, which have been critical to the firms that have performed successfully?
I think that really depends on the project. So each project's different. So some projects are more straightforward. Some of them, may have more of a project schedule issue. So
would you say though item number 3 and 4 is probably the biggest?
For this project, I would agree. 3 and 4 would be, the schedule. The schedule can flex a little bit with this project. We have the funding in 2023, but depending on the stormwater, if we do get some stormwater funds, it may actually push this project back a little bit, 6 months or 9 months. So the project schedule may not be as critical, but yeah, I would agree the similar experience and the key personnel are probably on this project are probably the more critical items.
I'd almost then consider making 3 and 4 25% each and then distribute, or almost 30% each, and then do 10, 10, 10, and 10 on the other 4. Partly because in looking at previous projects that have come in, I think all the companies have almost identical project understanding, project approach kind of pages.
This is Ken. I agree with Jim. I mean, if I would suggest that if we want to really get in deep on how this whole process of selection works, that we have some type of a work session to do that. It's worked fine. I think that when we went to the scoring where you put, if there's 4 firms, you give the best firm a 4. I think in a way you're weighting that a little bit already. I mean, if I remember right, we used to rank them on 1 to 10 and then you'd add up the points, and I think there's less of a chance of a tie now, maybe, although we had one the last time. But if we're really going to change this, I am going to be for that we study it, try to see what the ramifications are when we weight things. And I think for this, if we want to meet our time frame of getting done early, I think we leave it as is. Which isn't to say that we couldn't make it better.
Another thought to Julie's point, maybe we just look at the ranking and the scoring for this particular project, make a change, and I agree that, similar experience and key personnel probably ought to be weighted. This is a pretty big project, this is not a storm sewer issue.
Yeah.
And so maybe I suggest that we come up with a percentage to Habas's suggestion of rate these categories different for this project, just to get it on and get moving, and maybe discuss. And maybe we should do that for every project. Maybe weight it based on the type of project that it is, and so anyway, that would be my thought. Anyway, maybe just to compromise, move forward, and just come up with at this time with some sort of percentage of ranking per boss's thoughts.
Okay. Should we?
I mean, somebody else chime in.
No,
Vote on that, or?
no, thank you, Jim. And maybe instead of 1 to 4, it's a score of 10, so it all totals up to 100. We have 10, 10, 30, 30, 10, and 10, and then whoever gets the most points gets the project, I guess.
Well, we got 6 categories, so that's 16% if we just leave it as is. So we need to rank them some way and adjust those percentages to your thoughts and Julie's and even mine, maybe 25, 20, however you want to do it.
Well, just to make it easy, I was thinking project understanding is 10, project approach is 10, similar experience is 30, key personnel is 30, and then project schedule is 10, customer service is 10, which would total up to 100.
Well, that's very good. That's a good addition.
Thank you.
So then when you put a score in, are you going to put a score in of 1 to 10? Or are you going?
You could do 1 to 10, or if you wanted to give 27 out of 30, that's an option too. So either it's 1 to 10 and then multiplied by the 30%. If we want to save ourselves the math, we just put a straightforward number.
How did we come up with this? What's written at the top of the thing? If the firms are considered ranked the best firm with a score of 4 and the least qualified with a score of 1. Okay, well, right there on one issue, you can put somebody significantly ahead, like the people that are real good at roundabout design for similar experience. You give them a 4. I mean, in a way, you've already started a weighting system, because the best you can give the next guys, even though they're good, is a 3.
Right, but then you still want to weight it, right? Because otherwise, what'll happen is most people get 4s on project understanding, project approach.
No, they don't get 4s, not according to what it says at the top of the sheet. If I understand that right.
Can have, and certainly, but most of them seem to have almost similar stuff written in. And I'm just going by what we've seen so far. Everyone's going to say that they're going to meet schedule, right?
I totally agree. Totally.
Well, depending upon what we decide, we are clearly going to have to take that top line out of this score, ranking score. This is based upon how we've done it the last few times. So you're right about that, Ken. But if we do this, if we make that change, we're going to have to change that line. But I couldn't agree more, especially because staff agrees that in this particular case, this is not your run-of-the-mill project, that number 3, similar experience and key personnel, has to be weighted stronger. So, to do that, we're going to have to take out that line. You're right about that, but certainly we can find a way to weight those number 3 and number 4 higher and still get the job done.
My experience in being on both sides of the fence for this process of being selected for an engineering assignment has been that the most important element in selection is an interview. And we don't do interviews, which is fine. They can be very cumbersome, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, but to do a scoring sheet like that, I think they need to be simple and you need to go with them. But I don't think the right time to try to decide how to do it is in the next 10 minutes, when we've had this discussion many, many times before, like Jim said. So I am solely, if we're going to make a decision right now, we leave it like this. And if we want to consider changing it, then I think it should have some people get together. Marcia just left. I mean, we're down to, do we even have a quorum now?
Yeah, let's see here.
And Andrew left also.
Right.
Yeah, we have 5.
Okay.
So I guess one other option we could do this might solve the problem too in one way. If we still ranked them 1 to 4, each category, but at similar experience, when you put a 4 in there, we just multiply that by 3. So it has more of a weight. So instead of getting 4 points on that, the person would get 12 points. And we did that on similar experience. Key personnel, then you're still only rating these firms 1 to 4, and then we just do a little bit of math when we're here. So it'd be very simple to do it that way, and you still get your similar experience and your key personnel having a little more weight than the other categories.
As long as you don't allow ties.
Well, if we have a tie, we could do an interview. At a project of this scope, the fee for Tomahawk Creek Parkway design is probably going to be about $500,000. And so once you add in that PES, that could be $50,000 or so. So it's going to be a decent sized project. So if we need to get in and do interviews, we get it down to 2 firms and we can do that in July or August.
David, I meant a tie when we are doing the ranking. You cannot allow 2 firms to have 4s in the same category.
Correct. You'd have to make, right, that's right. You would have to make that decision on which one had 4 and which one had a 3.
I think that's a good approach, as long as the engineering companies are clear that's what we're doing. So when we put out the RFQ, RFP, whichever this one is, we make it clear that we're going to rank it 1 to 4, but number 3 and number 4 are going to be, have multiples of 3. So as long as they're clear, so they know to make sure their presentation is, weighted that way. So as long as they know that's how we're scoring, I'm fine. Personally, I'm fine with that. And then I am fine with because of your lead and because this is very unique to Leawood, that we have the ability and we're not changing the 6 categories. We're just weighting them differently. I don't think we need to totally get into the weeds of that right now to be able to move forward personally.
I might just add to that, Julie, is that, technically, if you were to be completely objective, then you would be scoring each one of those purely on that merit. But, what we're saying is we're scoring them in a comparative way, right? So, this sheet's almost a moot point because we score the sheet eventually based on who out of the 4 we think is the best.
David, so just so I understand, if we give a firm a 4, and then you said multiply it by 3, based on, say, similar experience, where did you come up with the 3? Just so I understand that. I mean, there's 2 or 3. Is this something that
Well, Boss, I just looked at the rating. So Boss had 1, 2, 5, and 6 categories at 10%, and then he had similar experience and key personnel at 30%. So that's where I came up with 3. If we just want to multiply by 2, we can do that too.
No, I mean, that was fine. It just went past me. So I'm fine with that. I think that's really achieves the same objective, I think, on a weighted matter. So
Just
I'm
real
fine
quick.
with that.
Okay. Sorry. On looking at item number 3, David, do you and Brian think that floodplain design and rotary design, roundabout design are equal, or is one more equal than the other?
Well, the floodplain modeling is going to get pretty entailed working with the county. So I mean, they're both unique, totally different. It'll be different divisions on the engineering firm, but they're going to be both. It's going to take a lot of. It's going to be a lot of work on the floodplain modeling, working with the county, because the county is currently going through some updates on their floodplain modeling also. So they'll need to know how the county is going to be doing that, make sure that they can do a similar process.
Is one of those issues more significant to the city than the other, the floodplain or the roundabout?
Well, we have funding for a roundabout, and we want to make sure that's what people are driving through all the time. So the floodplain, yes, we want to address that, but that obviously is something that occurs periodically. But from a safety aspect, they're both critical.
Would it make sense then to go, similar experience, A, floodplain 10%, B, roundabout 20%, or something, to Chuck's point?
That's where I was headed, boss.
Yeah.
I think one is more significant than the other in our evaluation.
Okay. So we could, so do you want to do floodplain at just 1 to 4, and then roundabout 1 to 4 times 2, or how do you want to do that?
I think that'd be right. That'll keep the math, unless we drop key personnel if you want to still keep roundabout higher. So then it could be roundabouts 25%, key personnel's 25%, and then similar experience floodplains 10.
How about if we just multiply those by 2? That'd make it a little easier on the math. The roundabout 1 to 4 times 2, key personnel 1 to 4 times 2, and then floodplain just 1 to 4.
You'd still have to go times 2 because otherwise it won't add up to.
Okay.
Adds up to 87. You don't want that.
So we'll do floodplain 1 to 4 times 2, roundabout 1 to 4 times 2, and key personnel 1 to 4 times 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
So effectively, we bumped up similar experience to 40%, which is fine.
David, question on the roundabout. Has there been any studies on accident ratios there at that intersection, which I know is you try to dart across Tomahawk Creek Parkway to go east, traveling east to go north. I mean, is that a high traffic accident area?
We haven't looked at it the past couple of years, or since COVID, we really haven't looked at it. We looked at it a few years ago, and there were several accidents there that occurred, but we haven't, due to COVID, with the less volume in traffic we're having, that the issue hasn't been as bad. But we're a little concerned once we get over COVID, once that traffic picks back up again, that we're gonna.
I just travel that intersection a lot. I know people going eastbound on Town Center Drive blow through the stop sign all the time, you know, to get across because of that wide intersection when they see traffic coming. So I think that roundabout would at least address some of those issues. Thank you.
Following up on Jim's comment, is that intersection in the top 10 accident intersections in the city?
I couldn't answer that. A lot of the intersections in the top 10 are along state line.
Yeah, 435 and State Line is number 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Julie?
When I was speaking to David yesterday, unless I misunderstood, one of the reasons the Fed funding came from a point system, and one of the reasons that roundabouts is on that scoring is because of the safety feature. Because at first, when this would be a double light situation, which makes it very different, especially within a certain distance. That's atypical from these other accident places. Like you said, 133rd and Row is a big accident corner. 127th and Row is a pretty big accident, but they're not double light situations where this one would have to be a double light situation so the very fact that we receive Fed funds partly because of the safety involved in these roundabouts, if done correctly, if I'm understanding what David said yesterday. And that in itself, I'm not a roundabout fan personally, but when I heard David's explanation yesterday, that was one of the things that was way high in my brain, is the very reason we're doing it is because of the safety. It's not an aesthetic thing. It's not to make some kind of a entrance to our town center drive. It's not for looks, if you will. It's for safety.
That's correct. Yeah. So the accident types are different. So in a roundabout, you do have accidents, but they're more just a side swipe. So it's, you know, it's not the T-bone accidents that you would get if somebody were to cut across an intersection and someone's going 40 miles an hour and they hit the car broadside. So you have that. Plus, it's, you know, the efficiency of the roundabout where you're not having to constantly stop vehicles just to let one car go or two cars go. So it's really those two benefits for the roundabout.
Because some of these newer ones, Lenexa might not be, but South Overland Park, and you see them going into Belton, they're done as features, as they're planning those new roads, or that's the way I perceive them anyway, and kind of trying to make some kind of an entrance or a statement, and as opposed to this one, we would choose a roundabout only because of safety. It's not making some kind of feature or statement in our road planning going forward. It's just the opposite.
Although, Julie, to the point of your art, I think that'd be a great location. You've got the Justice Center right there. That's a fairly major location for the city of Leawood. Leads you to City Hall from that side.
Yeah, something for sure. I imagine we'll do something, but that massive piece on the corner of the Justice Center, that weight of the stone, weight of the feather, is right on that corner. So those two will be adjacent. So we don't want fighting art pieces, but doesn't mean we can't have some big flag thing.
A fountain, perhaps.
Yeah, a fountain or something. Definitely, because I can perceive that. So coming our way, right in there, making it something awesome. If we've got it, let's make it awesome.
David, on a separate note, discussing roundabouts, they've got roundabouts at Blue Valley High on 159th.
Right.
It would be good to see particularly accident data on those two roundabouts, because they have a lot of traffic there that goes to the school, and it's on a 45 mile per hour road. I don't see many people slow down as much out there either.
And that's all a function, to get them to slow down is a function on the design. So how the roadway is entering the intersection, taper in or transition into that. So that's something the traffic engineer will have to address.
Sounds good.
Okay, so that's all we had. So we'll proceed forward. We'll probably tentatively schedule to meet first Wednesday in July if we can get that. That'll be, I think, the 7th. So it's right after July 4th.
And it
So
may
that'll
be in, maybe in person, right?
Maybe in person. Won't that be nice?
That'll be a shocker.
That include breakfast?
And we'll be doing breakfast once again. So looking forward to that. So, okay. So we'll plan. There you go. Next time, let's do this in person. So,
Haha.
Sounds good. Thank you.
well, thank you, everyone. And we'll be in contact once we move forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
David,
Thanks,
this is
David.
Chuck. I
Thanks, Ron.
got one last question, and it doesn't relate to this. It relates to the next project on Tomahawk. We're spending a lot of money to accommodate the bike community on both sides of Tomahawk between Row and College. And probably the most dangerous part for the bikers is north of College as you go around the corner and over the bridge into Mission Farms. I know we're not talking about that section, but that's the most dangerous part as far as bikers are concerned, because it gets narrow and there's traffic competition going over that bridge, and we won't be able to have the bridge 5 feet wider in both directions and so forth. Do you have any thoughts about what might be done up there?
Well, really, it would just be probably looking at Sharrows. So roadway striping and then signage is about all we can do through there. So the roadway, like you said, the roadway is pretty narrow. You're stuck with the bridge. We can't widen the bridge out. So it's pretty limited on what we can do other than, like I said, try to bring the driver's awareness to look out for cyclists.
Yeah, we're making this an expressway up to College, and then we kind of narrow down to the neck of a funnel going over that bridge, and that makes me nervous. And I just wondered if, in the back of somebody's mind, if they could come up with, I don't know, channeling the bikers over onto the shoulder for a walkway. I know we have a walkway on the west side there. I don't know how much a walkway on the east side for bikers. I don't know. That, when I ride my bike in that area, that's the most, you have to be the most cautious as a biker when you're going north of College until you get under 435. So it's just a comment.
Okay, yeah, we'll look at that once that project comes up and try to figure out the best way to stripe it or do some improvements for the cyclists and pedestrians. So
Thank you.
That
Okay.
light's gonna remain there, right? Going into Lee Boulevard and next to the wastewater, that light's intended to stay there, right?
that's correct. That light will, that traffic signal is permanent.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see you after the 4th of July.
Sounds good. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.